project for today is going to be this Craftsman riding mower. These were a pretty tough mower for how cheap they were back in the day. They had, a lot of them had these Kohler engines in them, the Command series. This is a 16.5 horse Kohler Command. So I'm pretty confident that the engine will be good. This is a customer of mine got this for free, and they really just need the motor out of it. So we're gonna see if we can get it going for him. He said that the starter doesn't work. I have a jumper pack hooked to it right now. You can hear it clicking. Then we got nothing when we turn the key. So we'll have to figure that out. The seat switch has already been disabled, and it's got some extended cables here that I just clamped. They already had little clamps on the end of them. So, but he did say he tried jumping it directly to the starter, and he got it to work a couple times, but it would get stuck. So I'm guessing that we have this fuse right here actually, which I believe should be a 30 amp. It's only a 20. But that fuse is still good actually, so I was thinking that the fuse was blown. These gas tank bolts are just in here loosely. It does turn over by hand, and it feels like it's got pretty good compression, so now we've got a few relays down in here. I can hear one of them clicking. And then we've got, there's a safety switch under here for the blade on and off. So pretty much the only other thing would either be a dead solenoid, or we have the safety switch for the clutch is maybe not working, which that's down in here underneath that solenoid. Well, for now I'm just gonna try to jump the solenoid. Well, it does turn over, so I know that the starter's kind of okay. It turns over pretty dang slow, so I'm thinking that this starter is about shot, since he said he had to bang on it with a hammer to get it to go. We'll try hooking the jumper pack directly to the starter and see what happens. It's not going to start that way unless we have power hooked up to the actual battery post, because it's got that electronic fuel shut off. So we'll try hooking that up and see how it spins over. So I've got a positive hooked down to the post on the starter, and I'm just going to touch the ground on this part here, and we'll see how it spins over. That seems to spin over pretty good. So we don't need to figure out really the safeties and stuff on the actual mower, since we're probably just pulling this motor off and putting it on his other one. He's got a Toro that has a bagger and everything, so he would rather have a good motor in that one. That one has a Tecumseh that was swapped into it that's blown up now. So we'll hook a battery up back here, and then I'll still use the jumper pack here to turn the starter over, and we'll see if it'll fire up. I'm not too optimistic. We're probably gonna have to go through the carburetor, since this has been sitting outside for at least a year now. So, but we'll see if we can get it to fire up. So I've got a battery hooked up to the actual battery terminals. So got the key on, chokes all the way up. We'll see if it'll fire up for us. I don't think it's gonna go. We'll have to dig into that carburetor and see what's going on. I'm sure it's gummed up from sitting. So we'll pull this air cleaner off first. He did say that he dribbled a little fuel in there and it did fire up, so I know that it probably has spark, but we just want to get it running, run it for a little bit and make sure it's a good motor for swapping, and then we'll go take it for a little test drive. So then we need a couple 10mm here, and there's a little electrical plug down here on the carburetor for the fuel solenoid. There we go. Pull these two nuts off here. And there's a breather hose coming off of the valve cover we need to take off too. And there's our carburetor. Looks like the outside of it's pretty dirty. It's there's a spacer plate behind this, and it's kind of stuck to that. But you don't really want that whole thing to come with. I'll pull this fuel line off first. I gotta pinch it off so it doesn't leak fuel everywhere. Before I try to separate that piece that's stuck on there, I'm gonna blow everything off here with some air just to clean it up a little bit. Then we can pinch this gas line off. I'll pull that off of there. Actually, just wiggling on that broke that carburetor loose, so that's good. We'll just pull it off all the way like that. And we'll have to twist it to get the choke linkage off. There's a ground wire connected here I forgot about. So I'll have to pull that off of there. Looks like it's an 8mm. A little bolt and a washer. Now we can tilt this out of here. You don't want to lose that little spacer there. Looks like there's a little zip tie on that positive wire. It didn't have any gas at all really come out of that line. I thought that zip tie would be rotten, but it was pretty good yet. But I guess there's a little bit of gas coming out of that carburetor. I'll put a pan under it. We'll run some fresh gas through. We did put fresh gas in the tank, so that should be okay. Looks pretty clean. I just like to flush the line. A lot of that junk's probably just stuff that fell off the line because it's kind of dirty, but I don't see any water or anything, so that should be good. Well, I got it cleaned up in the parts washer on the outside anyway. So take a 1/2-inch wrench here, pull this off, and you can see she's pretty gummy. It's supposed to pop right in and out really easily, but at least it still does move. And then pop this float bowl off. Sometimes if they're stubborn, I take a really little screwdriver. You can kind of pry in there. Don't go hitting on it because you'll dent the float bowl. It's not too terrible. There is a pretty good sized piece of gunk in there. and the float is pretty well stuck. Pin's coming out though. We'll go out that way. And that did pull out of there, but the end of it is pretty well shot. It's popped off of the end. So I'll have to put a new needle in it. Other than that, it's not terrible. I think I might soak this in the ultrasonic cleaner just to get in all the orifices and stuff. You can yank this plastic piece off of the adjustment screw here, but this one still turns, so I think I'm going to leave it for now just to see. And you can see that hole right there is completely plugged, and that's where it lets fuel through there, so you got to have that open. And there's I don't know how well you can see that. There's a small tube in the middle there that needs to be clear also. It's a little bit difficult to get a piece of wire in there. It's got to be pretty small. And that's plugged pretty good. There we go. Just push through that. That runs all the way up the center. So I'll get the ultrasonic cleaner going and we'll cook this in there for a little while. I'll clean some of this stuff out with carb clean and wipe it out with a rag before we put it in there, get it halfway clean. So I had it cooking in the ultrasonic cleaner for about an hour, and it's looking better, but I'm still gonna have to do some scrubbing to get it perfectly clean. That green ethanol stuff is pretty hard to get out of there without doing some serious scrubbing on it. So down inside that needle seat we need to do some cleaning. So one trick on these with the needle seat that is not removable is I just take a Q-tip, I spray a little bit of carb clean in there, and I take a Q-tip and I'll chuck it up in the drill, and then we'll just run that in there. So apparently these cheaper Q-tips with the plastic stem, they don't work quite as good for doing that, but these, I think it's more of a cardboard type or something. I bought the other kind, apparently I didn't realize it, so we'll try one of these and see if that works better. Might have been just a really tight fit because this is so filthy in there. Well, this is working a lot better. So it's getting cleaner, but I think we're gonna have to do multiple passes on it to get it cleaned out. Yeah, it looks a lot better already. So I don't know if I could really get you guys to be able to see down in there, but the top around the ridge of it is still kind of dirty, but it's got polished up in there. You can see how filthy that Q-tip got doing that, but I just did 3 passes in there, spraying a little more carb clean in each time, and that cleaned it up pretty nice. So I think now I'm gonna work on down in here a little bit, and then, well, I do have a new needle to put in it, so we'll do that. You can see that part is, that's more of the old-fashioned tarnish you get from non-ethanol fuel. The green stuff is from ethanol fuel. So So I've got that cleaned up. I got her float bowl cleaned up. We do have a little spot of corrosion in there. The float is cleaned up, and then I've got the new needle. And that is Kohler part number 82-85-S. This actually came with a bigger kit. I'm just making sure that that slides down in there smooth. They do have different needles for engines that have a fuel pump. This is a gravity flow. So we'll put the pop-off gauge on here. It does leak down a little bit. I'm holding just a tiny bit of pressure on it because as there's fuel pushing up on the float, that will hold up on it a little bit. But this one might end up leaking. That's the downfall of having the seat that's not removable, is you can't replace that. So at that point, your carburetor is just bad after that gets worn, or it gets like, sometimes I've seen like a tiny little chip out of the seat. So we'll tighten that back down. A lot of you might be wondering why I'd even bother with a carburetor in this bad a shape. This is an actual OEM Walbro carburetor. You buy any of the aftermarket stuff, and I always tell my customers it's about 1 in 5 chance that you're either going to get the right one or one that actually runs correctly. Some of them, they'll run fine, like full throttle will be fine, but they don't idle, or they won't run full throttle, but they'll only idle. The jetting is all off usually. The throat of the carburetors will be all the wrong sizes because they try to generalize one carburetor fits all. So you'll take, say this is a 16.5 horse. Well, this carburetor would also fit like a 14 horse, the dimensions for the actual mounting bolts, but the throat would be smaller. So you're taking and you're tightening down that airflow, and you're actually losing horsepower on or if you put like a aftermarket carburetor. You got to measure everything on them to make sure they're correct. I have had a few of them work, and that's what a lot of the people will just brag that they always had them work, but they just haven't had enough experience with them, because I've put a couple of them on and I've had good luck, and I've seen a ton of bad ones. I've seen way more bad ones than good ones. So I just try to always stick with the OEM stuff, especially when I'm doing it for customers. They don't want to be coming back with fuel problems later. And the aluminum they use on those is actually really bad quality too. If it gets any moisture in it, it'll start corroding into like a white powder. And once that starts happening, the carburetor's junk, and that usually within a year they'll start doing that if they sit a lot. But we'll get this put back on there and we'll see if it'll run. So I'll put the throttle in first. And then the choke. Might as well throw this fuel line on here. And then slide it up like that. Just gonna make sure the throttle and choke work. And then we've got this little bolt for our ground wire off the carburetor. And our plug in for the hot lead. I'll zip tie that back up there once we know everything works. I think that's going to be good for that. I need to put that clamp on, but I'll let the fuel flow for now, and we'll see if it overflows. Put this clamp on here. Doesn't seem to be overflowing with fuel yet, so I think it might be okay. Then we'll put this air cleaner assembly back on. I'll clean a lot of this stuff up when we go to put it on the other mower, because right now we're just kind of trying to prove that this is a good engine. We'll throw the air cleaner back on. I won't throw a bunch of junk in there if it does start. I'm thinking it will, as long as there's nothing else wrong. And like I said, he did try dumping fuel down in there and said it fired up and ran as long as he kept dumping fuel in, so that shows that it should have had decent spark. We'll clean a little bit of stuff up here and then we'll see if it'll fire up. So I got the key on again, turn the jumper pack on, and I've got the parking brake on, so we'll see if it'll fire up. Well, it runs pretty good. Even ran at low RPM. That's usually what they'll struggle with if there's something going on in the carburetor. It won't idle quite right, but I think I'm going to run it outside. I did check the oil. It was a little bit low, but not too bad, but we'll let it run outside a little bit and burn all that junk off so I don't smoke up the shop. And then maybe take it for a little test drive and make sure everything's fine once the motor heats up and everything. And this one should be a good one. It was a little bit tappy, but the hydraulic lifters on these take a while to pump up, so they sound clattery for a while when they've sat for a long time. Well, we'll try firing it up again, and I'll drive it outside and I'll let it burn off all that junk off the muffler. Running good, but it's burning a lot of junk off of that muffler. That seems like it's a pretty good runner. I think it just had maybe a valve cover leaking or something when it sat for a year or whatever, and then there's a bunch of dust and dirt and stuff on it that's burning off too. So when we pull it out of here, we'll get it all cleaned up and ready for the other mower. Otherwise, I think it's actually a decent runner. These Kohlers are such good engines that I pretty much assumed that it was, but we'll give it an oil change and a service and everything. But for now, that's probably good enough. We don't have to do too much more to it. I'm gonna wait till tomorrow. We'll take it for a test drive and run it through its paces. The deck doesn't work. The cable is busted for engaging the deck, so we'll just be able to take it for a test drive and see how it does, and then we'll be ready to yank this one out of here. Well, I've got it running outside. I got a battery bungee to the back. We'll take it for a little spin and see how the transmission is and everything, and make sure the motor runs all right. charging system's even working. We got the battery bungeed in the back here, as you can see. Well, it seems to run good. The charging system worked. Those are the two things I was concerned about. So probably, if not the next video, will be the video after that. You'll see we'll be swapping this motor into a Toro Riding mower. This one is a good candidate to fix up, but it needs a lot of little things that'll kind of nickel and dime you. It needs the cable for the deck, and then we don't even know what condition the spindles for the deck and stuff are in, and then the safety switches are not working, so we'd have to figure that out to get it running with the starter, with the key switch, instead of having to jump start it like we're doing. And it's a little bit noisy on the drive pulleys, so that stuff would have to be gone through. So it's just a bunch of little stuff that would add up to quite a bit. So it just makes a really good donor tractor for parts. But that's going to do it for this one. If you like this sort of thing, like the videos and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.